And there was uplifting news when Connie, aged 106, left hospital in Birmingham. She said she felt very lucky to have shaken off the virus. Keep in BBC News.
For you on BBC News, including this, he just keeps on going. The 99-year-old military veteran is raising millions for medical staff on the front line.
Paul Potts, one of the century's greatest mass murderers, is reported to have died of natural causes. He and the Khmer Rouge movement he led were responsible for the deaths of an estimated 1.7 million Cambodians.
There have been violent protests in Indonesia, where Playboy has gone on sale for the first time. Traditionalist Muslim leaders have expressed disgust. The magazine's offices have been attacked and its editorial staff have gone into hiding.
It was clear that Paula's only contest was with the clock, and as for a sporting legacy, Paula Radcliffe's competitors will be chasing her new world best time for years to come.
Quicker and quicker, she seemed just to slide away under the surface and disappear.
Welcome back. Very glad to have you with us on BBC News. President Trump has said the US is passing the peak of new coronavirus infection. His plans to suspend funding for the World Health Organization have been heavily criticised. Crisis and pandemic deaths in care homes. The UK government has placed a new testing regime. Germany has announced the first easing of the measures imposed to contain the spread of COVID-19. Chancellor Merkel says some schools will reopen from May the 4th. The European Union's been discussing how to coordinate a strategy among member states to relax restrictions. Are you ready to catch Adler reports from Brussels?
3 days into Spain's partial lifting of its coronavirus lockdown, and there's still a lot of confusion. Police say people are unsure if they're allowed back to work or not. In fact, Spain has only lifted restrictions for factory and construction workers, an attempt to kickstart this COVID-19 battered economy. Many are scared.
I feel bad, like I'm in danger, but what are you going to do? I need to provide for my family, I need to go back to work.
Spain's Prime Minister hit back at his critics today. He only made decisions after taking scientific advice, he said. Juggling economic, social and health risks is daunting for every government in this pandemic. It's a big challenge for the EU too. Remember its messy initial response to the crisis? Today, Brussels called for a coordinated exit strategy from lockdown measures, but only if
there is a significant decrease in the spread of the virus over a sustained period of time. Sufficient health system capacity is needed. There needs to be a reserve. And you need sufficient surveillance and monitoring capacity in form of large-scale testing.
With 27 different healthcare systems and 27 different economic priorities, the European Commission admits that in the end, each country will decide for itself when to lift restrictions, but it's worth noting that no one here or in EU capitals is talking about getting back to normal, lifting lockdown altogether. This is a targeted, gradual lifting of the restrictions, which would be reintroduced again if there's another big second wave of infection. Today, the EU's biggest economy said shops in Germany would start opening as of Monday, schools as of the 4th of May. But Angela Merkel insisted
dass es jetzt kein falsches Vorpreschen geben darf.
This isn't a race, however well-intentioned. We have to understand we'll be living with this virus until we have the medication or a vaccine to deal with it.
Delighted to see friends, unaware of their parents' nervousness, Danish children streamed back to primary and nursery school today. These are nail-biting moments for the EU as well. The lid is lifting on Europe's lockdown, but no one knows for how long. Katya Adler, BBC News, Brussels.
Well, of course, the pandemic has put huge pressure on our healthcare systems. Doctors, hospitals, insurance companies, all looking at not only containing and treating people, but trying to look ahead and prepare should something similar happen again. Dr. Emma Miller is a senior lecturer at the College of Medicine and Public Health at Flinders University in Adelaide. Thank you very much indeed for your time. How do you expect coronavirus, COVID-19, to change the healthcare landscape?
I think, well, hopefully we're going to expect significant change in the future. When all the dust settles, I think there's going to have to be a really hard look at how different health systems have managed the crisis. And it's quite clear that there has been great inequity, not just between countries, but within countries. And it is to be hoped that those sorts of things will be addressed in the future to address, just in case we have another outbreak, which I'm pretty sure we will have in the future.
It is to be hoped, but do you think really they will be addressed?
Well, you know, if history is any guide, I'd have to say I'm a little bit pessimistic, but it really is our only hope for the future. There's no reason to believe that this won't happen again, and possibly in the near future. We've had lots of warnings about this happening up until now. Nothing much has happened, so I guess there's no reason to be overly optimistic, but hopefully the scale of this disaster, especially on our economies, will be enough to get people at least considering what steps we might take in the future to reduce those inequities.
There is a real hope, isn't there, that technology will change how we react, how we cope with such pandemics. Can you give us some specific examples of change you expect there?
I think that digital health in particular is going to be much more broadly used. And in Australia, as a response to this pandemic, we have introduced telehealth for most primary healthcare consultations, and that's been taken up with much gusto by GPs and the general public. But it does also bring into relief the problem of the digital divide. So again, another source of inequity within countries and between countries. So it's still this basic matter of health equity that needs to be addressed.
What lessons do you think can be learned from the way that South Korea, say, Singapore and China dealt with it?
There are vast differences between the way that governments work in different countries and also the way that healthcare services work. The positives about those systems is that there was a centralised authority that was able to quickly mobilise forces and make sure that things were done consistently and coherently throughout the state. But, you know, you could argue that there are, some significant sort of questions about human rights and breaches of privacy that occurred in those states too. Also, there's a great level of trust compared to other countries in authority in those particular countries that make that sort of system work a little bit better. So it might not easily transcribe to the more sceptical countries around populations around the world.
Sounds like we'll be back to this one, Dr. Miller. Thank you very much indeed. We'll see you there for now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Now, when comedian Melanie Bracewell found herself facing weeks of self-isolation as New Zealand went into lockdown, she decided to make videos of herself doing impressions of the Prime Minister, as she do. Her clips on TikTok now been watched by thousands across the world and brought her many fans, including Jacinda Ardern herself. Let's take a look.
Be strong, but be kind.
On some of my videos being like, oh, I thought this was Jacinda, and I was like, oh, that's quite weird. I've never got that comparison before. I wonder if I just used a bit more makeup, if I could look a little bit more like her. Well, I just came back from overseas, and I've now been in isolation for like 5 weeks. I was really trying to figure out what I could do with the extraordinary amount of time I had, and I decided I'd make videos on the internet, because what else can I do at this time? Pretty much everyone in New Zealand is meet Jacinda. She's always everywhere. But I genuinely never met her or ever talked to her in my life. So this was like, oh my god, it's the mother of the nation. I'm blessed.
Para kasama na. Wala na akong paglawas.
She does my makeup better than I do.
I think she's in the world spotlight at the moment. The way she's going to handle everything so well. You just look at the graphs and it's like, oh wow, we're going down, we're going in the right direction. But the problem I have now is that anytime I upload a video where I'm not Jacinda, people are like, oh, get Jacinda back. So now I feel like I'm trapped in this character forever. It would be so much easier to like look vaguely like Boris Johnson or look like Donald Trump or something. It's so much easier to make fun of it. But like, make fun of Jacinda or this feels like making fun of like a puppy. She's so nice that it's like, I'm not even really making fun of her, I'm just like trying to be her because she's cool.
Gamit ng gun?
No, I genuinely want to be.
Well, despite the tonight reminded of events a year ago in Paris when the medieval cathedral of Notre Dame, the world's most almost destroyed. To mark the anniversary, the cathedral's great bell was rung earlier. As you'd expect, work on restoring the cathedral to its former glories has been badly delayed. The bell was rung too to thank all the medical staff in France who are working to contain the coronavirus pandemic. There is much more for you on all the news anytime, national and international, on the BBC website. You can reach me and most of the team on Twitter. I'm at BBC Mike Henry. That is it for now. Thank you very much for watching. Come again.
An area of low pressure is bringing wet and windy weather to eastern areas of Uruguay. In the last 24 hours, 73 millimetres of rain has fallen from this weather system that continues to edge now out into the South Atlantic. And behind that, the pressure is rising, so the weather is becoming dry, but it's quite chilly across northern Argentina and Uruguay. Temperatures in Buenos Aires just around 19 degrees, and similar highs expected in Montevideo. Further north, some torrential downpours to watch out for Ecuador, eastern areas of Peru and northern areas of Bolivia. These storms are capable of bringing 50 to 75 millimetres, so there is a risk of seeing some flooding issues here. Tracking into central and southern areas of Argentina, the weather is actually quite warm at the moment, with temperatures pushing well up into the mid to high 20s thanks to the Fern effect. Over the next few days, Buenos Aires stays dry with some sunshine. We are going to see those temperatures moving back to the mid to high 20s as we go through the weekend and into next week. And talking of hot weather, well, the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico is seeing some very high temperatures along with Belize. Top temperatures probably around 37, 38 degrees during Thursday. It's also generally on the warm side across the Caribbean as well, with showers through the That said, we could see some showers moving into Havana over the next few days, but Kingston staying dry, settled and sunny.
Quer saber como é que Sky pode facilitar a sua vida? Com ele, você consulta a sua fatura, altera a data de vencimento, forma de pagamento e muito mais. E se o problema for funcional, fica tranquilo. No app você seleciona códigos de erro, além de agendar e realizar visitas técnicas. Tudo com muita praticidade, rapidez e segurança. Baixe ou atualize o app e aproveite o melhor da Sky.
Dúvida sobre o que assistir ou quer saber onde está passando aquele filme que seu amigo te indicou? Fica tranquilo, a K ajuda você a encontrar. Acessá-la é muito fácil. Lá no app, você clica na aba Sky, depois em K, assistente digital e pronto. Com ela você encontra entretenimento de um jeito rápido e prático. Basta procurar pelo canal, a gênero do filme que você quiser assistir, encontre a programação certa para você. Converse com a casa.
Stay across the rapid changes in this unprecedented news story for all the latest coronavirus developments as they happen.
And NPR coverage from across the globe. Join the team here around the clock on BBC World News. Countries across South America have taken drastic measures to prevent the spread of the virus. Borders have closed. Frequently used to protest now respect. A bit of both. China was the first into the coronavirus crisis and is now the first slowly coming out. As it gradually gets back to work, first growth figures this week discovered just how badly the virus hit China's economy and what that might mean for the rest of us. Join me at Fresh with Aswani on BBC World News.
On BBC World News, Click looks at the new media tools set to revolutionise business and personal life. And for more, use hashtag BBC Click.
This week, following phones for the coronavirus. How to come together without staying apart. And now that's what AI calls music. Hello, we're still here, and so are you, so welcome. I hope you're well. We are, and we've been working hard on a new look Click that will work when we can't get out of it as much. So, my living room is now also my studio, and welcome to my study. The good news is though, you don't just get to look inside my house, we get to look inside Lara's too, so let's go to Shay Lara now. Hello mate, how you been?
I'm okay. I've actually been pretty busy, albeit virtually, and luckily, like you, I have one of these in my house.
It's funny that, isn't it? Yeah.
How are you?
All right, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think we both appreciate that we're lucky to still be working, which keeps us busy and keeps us in a good frame of mind. But yeah, I'm missing the people that I can't be with, and we're all adjusting here as well. These are strange times. What we plan to do in the next few weeks is look at some technologies and gadgets that will help you during lockdown, whether that's to help you work or communicate or play or to help with the kids or to relieve stress, which is what we're going to do first, because this is an anxious situation. You've got something that might help, right?
I have. This is the Somnox sleep robot. Now, the idea is that it sort of breathes next to you as you cuddle it. Well, it's designed for insomniacs, and it has sensors in it. It's got an accelerometer and a CO2 sensor, and it'll track the breathing rate of its user, and it'll breathe a fair bit slower than the person using it. The idea being, if your breathing rate drops, you're more likely to get off to sleep easily. But I didn't have the greatest time with it. I have to say it felt quite odd holding on to it.
I
so
can
I took
imagine,
it out of bed. Well, yeah, it really did. But I put it on the floor, and what was even stranger was it was breathing down on the floor. But the thing I do have to say is that when I tested it in the daytime on its relaxation mode, it did feel a little bit more like going to a yoga class and just getting your breathing right for that. So I could certainly see the relaxation purpose, and maybe if I was a real insomniac, it could help. And there are so many ways that we're seeing technology being used at the time of this pandemic. As the virus continues to spread, some governments around the world have launched contact tracing apps, which they hope may help control it. In Israel, the Shield app records GPS location, storing that data locally on a user's device. So if someone gets the virus, they're asked if they're happy to share their data with the platform, so anyone they may have been in contact with can be notified. In Singapore, the Trace Together app is hoping to do the same, but using Bluetooth signals to monitor users' phones that have been nearby. This method, some argue, is more privacy conscious.
I downloaded the app because it's just easier for the contact tracers to contact me, or that I could help them to contact other people if I was actually affected.
Until these apps, contact tracing had been a very manual process.
The person must be well enough to answer your questions. He must be able to list down the details where he went and what the things he did. And often we cannot remember what happened. The more we lose details, the more likely we can't control the epidemic effectively.
Many more countries are looking to launch contact tracing apps. Whilst the UK is considering a similar one to Singapore, the EU is advocating a single app with data protection at its heart.
So contact tracing is really vital, and here's why. People move. They move quickly and they move a long way. Now these visualizations are from a company called Tectonics, and what they did was they isolated 700,000 mobile devices in New York, and they followed them over just 2 days. Now look how far they go in 2 days, right, all the way across to the west coast. Here's Italy in early March, and look how many people travelled to the UK by the end of March. So contact tracing looks at the spread of COVID-19 by following particular people as they move around. But what these visualizations show is actually how people move about more generally. And some governments are trying to use this information to look at how people are moving around even under lockdown conditions. And they're not trying to get the data from individual mobile devices. They're going straight to the big mobile operators. One of those countries is Norway. Oslo is usually a bustling city of almost 700,000 people. But like other places around the world, lockdown is now in force to slow infection rates. However, outside the capital, it's vital to understand how the epidemic is spreading throughout the rest of the country. Telenor is Norway's largest mobile operator, with 80% of all data traffic passing through its infrastructure. So it knows roughly where each phone is throughout the day as that phone hops between different base stations. Telenor then provides the user location data to the Norway Institute of Public Health to try and track the spread of COVID-19.
In our systems, there is knowledge about where people are at basically any time. So the trick here is to understand how the population is moving on an aggregated level. So if you understand how people are moving around, then you're also able to understand how disease is potentially spreading across the country or across continents.
The NIPH takes this data, combines it with other information relating to COVID-19 infections, and then uses a mathematical model that simulates the spread of the virus to try and predict how many cases are expected in each region and when.
We have data on hospitalizations in Norway since the start of the epidemic, and we have data on cases of imported registered cases to Norway since the start of the epidemic. We can lift, for instance, restrictions, we can open schools and close schools and things like this, and we can use a model to inform us about what is the effect of doing that.
We're primarily forecasting for the next 3 weeks so that we can look at what need will there be for hospital beds and for intensive care, and that's very important for planning in the health services. The effects not only on the epidemic itself, but on public health overall and on the economy and society overall, that we will be able, through modelling, to tackle, manage this epidemic in a much better way than the world has been able to during prior epidemics or pandemics.
However, as always, anonymity is one of the major worries, even in times of international emergency.
We're extremely cautious when it comes to privacy, and what we're very afraid of is that individuals can be re-identified from the data. We count only groups of people larger than 20, because we believe it's very, very hard to re-identify all individuals in groups larger than 20.
This isn't the first time that Telenor has used mobile phone data to track the spread of diseases. Previously, it's worked in Bangladesh to track malaria and Pakistan for dengue fever. The models have helped the governments there design more effective national response preparedness. Around the world, countries including the UK, Austria, Israel and the US are all seeking to work with mobile operators to adopt similar models to Norway to try and prepare and possibly even contain the virus.
Iran literally means a place of civilization. They even had a word for the land beyond their country, and it was Turan. It meant a place of chaos, a place of darkness.
So this is the actual house that Naipaul was born in 1932. It has a kind of colonial quality, which I think Naipaul was always writing about and lamenting.
Dickens was the first person to write stories that appealed to the masses. He was a literary figure, but his audience was of every status in society.
Who am I with? Faith Ringgold. And who's she, you might well ask? Not many people have heard of her. She's only one of America's most important artists.
I think of fashion as a very important part of culture. It empowers you, makes you feel good about yourself, and it says a lot about society, it says a lot about empowerment, it says a lot about inequality, all those things.
Inspiring arts and culture on BBC World News. Life is full of challenges, but it's how we deal with them that defines us, makes us, reshapes us, frees us, and changes us forever. Life Changes, a series of thought-provoking stories in an ever-changing world on BBC World News, bbc.com. Now showing on BBC Real.
This is the great Viking Age mystery. For 150 years, scholars have tried to figure out exactly what this inscription means. The key point that we found starts right here, where it tells about somebody who died 9 generations before the stone was erected. That would be in the 530s. And back then, we did have a major climate catastrophe when the sun disappeared. And that's exactly the same that has happened in Norse mythology. That's what they feared. The sun would disappear again. What they feared, a climate catastrophe, they could not avoid. But we can avoid the climate catastrophe we have today.
Watch more stories like this at bbc.com/real.
For many, religion offers some spiritual calm, but of course at the moment, communities can't get together in the way that they normally would.
Yeah, so religious leaders are doing what they can to work around this. This Muslim call to prayer in Egypt has been replaced by a message urging people to stay home to pray.
And the Jewish festival of Passover started this week, and that's been looking a little different too. Rabbi Mendel Cohen here has been doing his best to connect with his community online. As well as videos of what would be happening in synagogue, here he's demonstrating how the Seder, the first dinner of Passover, is set up.
And this Easter's Sunday service will also be different. Sophia Smith-Gaylor has been finding out how religions are adapting.
With mass gatherings being banned, many religions have had to stop public worship.
And with churches closing, many have had to be particularly innovative, with some turning to live streaming.
Good morning, everyone. This is terribly exciting.
St James's in Sussex Gardens in London is one of the churches that's been experimenting online.
We were determined that the worshipping life of the church should continue, but it would have to continue in new and unexpected ways.
When the coronavirus crisis started, they began live streaming their services on Facebook, but they haven't stopped at that.
We have a large group of families, a large number of children, so we wanted really to provide something that would speak to them, comfort them, encourage them and build them up in the faith. So yes, we threw our all into a rather madcap virtual Sunday school.
It's Palm Sunday.
Every week we send out an e-Sunday, which contains within it readings for the day and other notices and other devotional materials, and also an activity. So families download the activity.
We're going to make
This week we made a cross for Easter.
For Palm
For
Sunday.
Palm Sunday. And then about 2 weeks ago we made this Virgin Mary.
Yeah, it's been a lovely way to maintain continuity now that normal life there's a bit of a hiatus in normal life, and it's been a lovely way to sort of maintain a sense of normality.
There's been a big focus on web resources like achurchnearyou.com. That's our church finder. It's been a really, really key resource for us in recent weeks. We've now got more than 3,000 live stream services listed on that site. As someone who is a regular churchgoer myself, I can't wait for that day when on that Sunday I can walk back into my church and see family, loved ones and friends for the first time. That's great. I feel quite emotional about that.
All of these digital responses to this crisis have undoubtedly changed how people interact with faith online. But what would be interesting to see is how much it will remain after the coronavirus crisis is over.
That was Sophia Dale, and I'm joined online now by the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. Archbishop Justin, thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Spencer, it's a great privilege to be with you. I'm very happy to be here.
We've just talked about some of the new online tools and services that the church is providing. How do you think they'll benefit people?
You will have seen, and I know you have seen, churches using live streaming, which is having a huge impact. There was a service a couple of weeks ago which reached 12 million people, 10 times our normal total church attendance. That's remarkable. You couldn't begin to do that in the past. The best you could have had was a nationally televised service. Here you can have everything from a nationally televised service to something that's just relevant to your village, your town, your part of a city, your part of the world. Or you can join in something from anywhere in the world. We had images from something I did online. I won't say from where, but a country where it's very difficult to be a Christian in public, or not allowed to worship or own your faith in public. And they had a message saying, I haven't been able to go to church, but I've just joined in a service with the Archbishop of Canterbury. Well, there's a cloud to every silver lining, but I think the service was what mattered. And so technology is transforming the reach, the ability to comfort, console and encourage.
It's a time of several religious festivals at the moment. It's Easter, it's Passover, Ramadan is coming up soon. It's traditionally a time when families and friends will get together. There will be people who want to come to a church. What would you say to them?
Well, what I would say to them is, that's me as well. The idea of not being at an Easter service, I can't remember any time I've not been at an Easter service in the last more than 40 years. And so it is going to be very strange, but in the earliest centuries of Christian history, church was in the home. And these wonderful buildings we have in the UK, these amazing historic buildings, are treasures, but they are not essentials. We can worship, and Christians all over the world do, without buildings. The technology side is giving us a sense of a resurrection of generosity, of kindness, of contact, of care for one another. And I suppose both the challenge and the hope
is what we're doing with each other and for each other now, and that sense of mutual compassion and support that technology is enabling will be carried on in the new world after this pandemic has died down.
Justin Welby, Archbishop of Canterbury, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Spencer, very much indeed.
Music is a lot more than just a collection of notes. Packed with creativity and emotion, it seems like something only humans could make. But that could be about to change. I've been meeting musicians around the world who are embracing the machine, and I started at Imogen Heap's house.
So we've been lucky enough to be invited to Imogen's studio just outside of London. This is a place where many of her hits you might recognise, and also the music for the Harry Potter stage show were created or worked on. And now it's being used to create something a little bit different.
This is the Sapiens Show.
Imogen has been working with artificial intelligence researcher Tom Collins. Many of the underlying parts of this experimental, unreleased track were generated automatically by his AI algorithm.
We are the shadows behind the shadows, so that was the AI and everything. No, I love it. I love that, the challenge of this is going to be different. It's generated a song that I would never have written because it's taken me into patterns that I would normally haven't done, so I've had to go, well, how would I do that, and how would I transition from this to this? It's doing what I hoped it would do, which is what I believe AI will do for music and musicians, which is to push us to the next level of our own creativity.
This song is still a work in progress, but Imogen isn't the only major performer that Tom's been working with.
By 5%. That's a little less pessimistic than the IMF that was, I think, was minus 6.7, but it's in the ballpark.
Bill, just quickly, where do you see the Aussie dollar going? Because it's seen a strong rebound since late March, but we're also seeing the US dollar seeing phenomenal strength.
Yes, look, our view around the Aussie dollar is that the three things that drive it: interest rate differentials, commodities, and risk. And I think risk will remain the key driver over the next 3 to 4 months.
Of the virus. On January 7th, President Xi Jinping's first public awareness is made known, and he ordered actions to be taken. A week later, January 14th, that's the teleconference that this is based on, and that, according to a government release, which, by the way, came out a month after the teleconference, says a, quote, sober understanding of the situation was made known to top government officials, adding that, quote, clustered cases suggest that human-to-human transmission is possible. But here's the concern. Publicly, as late as January 19th, the Wuhan Health Commission said the outbreak was preventable, controllable, and not contagious. The next day, a very different narrative. Leading health officials acknowledged cases of human-to-human transmission. They even stressed that medical personnel had gotten infected. And of course, Anderson, we know 3 days after that, Wuhan went on lockdown. Now, we've reached out to the National Health Commission. We'll let you know what they have to say about this new reporting.
And do we know how far up the chain of command this went?
It's not clear how much President Xi Jinping himself knew about this. We knew he was made aware of the virus, but it's not clear he knew the potential severity of it. That said, I think the biggest issue here is the timing, and we have to go back to when this was all playing out. It was during what is the largest annual mass migration of humanity. I mean, hundreds of millions of people traveling for the Lunar New Year holiday. So the question is, if it was 6 days' time, and that may not seem like a lot, but that's 6 days where you could potentially have stopped people from traveling and people from coming together in those mass gatherings, and that could have had an impact in slowing the spread of this virus.
David Culver, thank you very much, David. I appreciate it as always. I want to check with Chris, see what he's working on for Cuomo Prime Time. Chris, hey, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Coop? I've got New York's governor on the show tonight to talk about the realities on some big questions that you've been handling here. Who has the power to reopen the economy? I thought we had decided this twice, actually, but it seemed that the president, as you pointed out tonight, moved back to his original position that he has the power. Let's get the governor's take on it, because the governors are pushing back, and you'll get to judge the arguments at home. Then it's going to be really the central question that I can't believe is being ignored. No plan, no phase of any type of reopening can happen without testing. If they can't keep us safe, it doesn't matter where we start. Nobody can go anywhere. We're even hearing it from the business community. I want the governor's take on that. And I'll tell you about what's happening at home. It is a long road for everybody who gets messed up with this. Every family gets hit in hard ways, and we are learning our lessons here as well.
All right, Chris, we'll see you in about 5 minutes from now. We'll be right back. More on Zan.
In 1917, Cartier came upon his breakthrough, revolutionary, by far most famous design, the Cartier tank. Now, the inspiration for this design was, as the name suggests, a British Mark IV tank.
For much of its history, it was an extremely exclusive watch. But the tank was made in very small numbers until the mid-1960s. Cartier tanks from before the 1960s especially are tremendously collectible. It's an absolutely iconic design.
This became an elegant symbol, a very desirable watch. Through the ages, we have Jackie Onassis wearing this watch. We have Truman Capote, Andy Warhol, Duke Ellington, Jeff Goldblum. Team Tank is a stylish team indeed. It's a rectangular case that has these very identifiable vertical sidebars called brancars. You can recognize the tank across the room.
I'm Matt Rivers in Mexico City. This is CNN.
We are using now also passenger planes, flying cargo only. We rebuilt 4 of our passenger planes, took out the seats so that we can put more cargo in the cabin. All crises have their special demands, but let me say, the best is to take the situation day by day and take fast decisions on that. And of course, have trust in your team. Then you will manage the crisis best.
This pandemic has triggered an unprecedented response.
In this battlefield, we didn't have much equipment. The enemy was invisible.
I have spent time in the hospital through all this and recognize the incredible toll it takes on my fellow healthcare workers.
If I'm optimistic about one thing coming out of this, it's that it will be an incredible global lesson in public health.
No one on the front lines of this ever considers just staying home.
I'm Patrick Upman in Havana, Cuba. This is CNN.
Reminder, join us tomorrow night for our 7th CNN Global Town Hall, Coronavirus Facts and Fears, beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern. I know I said it was our 6th earlier. I was wrong. It's our 7th. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden will take your questions. Also, Facebook founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg, his wife, Dr. Priscilla Chan, they're going to join us to talk about what Facebook is doing and what the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative are doing to combat the coronavirus. We think the town halls have really become the place to take the time and really dig into some of the most pressing coronavirus issues of the week, really focusing on the virus itself. We hope you join us. News continues. For us, though, of course, I want to hand it over to Chris for Cuomo Prime Time. Chris?
Anderson, how could you possibly keep track of all you are doing? You are carrying us on your back, and I, for one, say thank you. I need the help right now. Thank you. I'll tell you one thing that's for sure. You'll do a great job, as always. I can't wait to watch. Anderson Cooper, now me. Chris Cuomo, welcome to Prime Time. We hear a lot about flattening curves. And let's be honest, that makes us want better days, right? Good. What happens next? First, can President Trump relax social distancing standards? He seemed to say yes, then he said no, now he seems back to yes. Governors don't agree. New York State's governor joins us tonight. He says he'll set us straight. We'll see. But there's also a bigger problem than who has the power. It's where is the plan? All this talk about dates and phases. Be clear. The only word that matters almost never gets mentioned by Trump. Testing. Little clue. Do you even know who's in charge of planning and testing for us in the federal level? Here's a hint. It ain't Trump. It ain't Fauci. It ain't Birx. How do we not even know the name of the person who has our fate in his hands? Together as ever as one. If that is the key, it has to mean one fate and one concern. That concern, who will keep us safe? Let's get after it. The numbers are going to change, but they're already scary. 30,000 lost to this virus in just 6.5 weeks. We're still playing catch-up. And now there's all this talk about reopening, but no real plan for how to do it while keeping us safe. Testing, tracing, treating. Who even does it? The virus and the fight is hitting families all over this country harder and longer than expected. We here in Casa Blanca are living that reality. So I hear you, and we will make sure that your concerns are known to the people in power. Just today, some of the country's business leaders were convened ostensibly to move public sentiment towards reopening. That was the play. But they said what anyone who knows anything has said. You want to open the economy? You want confidence with consumers? You better be able to keep them safe. Testing, testing, testing. That's what they said. It's why the mayor of Los Angeles now says large gatherings, sporting events, in the immediate future, no way. Not in LA until maybe 2021. Now, what does that mean in another state like New York? Is this the new reality? Let's get straight to talk. We have the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. Good to see you, big brother.
Good to see you, little brother.
You good for a reality check? I want to try and nail down some of these things that are going on.
Yeah, let's start with the reality check. But let's start with our own reality, okay? Your appearance suggests you didn't have the best day. When your buttons are undone, your shirt is a little tattered and wrinkled. How are you doing? How's it going over there? It wasn't a great day, huh?
First of all, that's a cheap shot. And you know what? It was. Yeah, I was going to say this.
Not great, but it looks better.
Thank you. I'll take anything better right now. I've had my own struggles. They're common. And now we have another common aspect of this that, as you know well, and you've been telling me all day, families all across the state and the country are experiencing. It's very rare for a family to be one and done. Christina now has COVID. She is now positive. And it just breaks my heart. It is the one thing I was hoping wouldn't happen, and now it has.
Yeah, well, look, it's something we talked about, right, when this first started. It's very hard for a person to quarantine in a home and other people not to get infected. That's why we talked about people who quarantine in hotels. They quarantine in a hotel room. The food for 14 days, the food that comes in, they don't even take the plates out for 14 days. I mean, you want to talk about intense quarantine, right? But to do it in a home where a person's bringing you dishes, bringing you food, even if they're wearing a mask and gloves, you know, that virus can live on some surfaces up to 2 days. So in some ways, this was inevitable. Luckily, it was Christina, not one of the kids. Now, this is what families are dealing with, right? The point of you communicating this, rather than just taking a couple of weeks off, is you're communicating to Americans what this is like. And by the way, this is what it's like. One person gets the virus, other people in the home get the virus. You now have a mother and a father with the virus. You have 3 kids that you have to take care of. This gets very complicated very fast. So there is a reality to this. The good news is, look, to the extent you think maybe Christina's going to blame you for this, there's a lot of other things, as we know, she can blame you for. So this is going to be number 17 on the list. True. So I wouldn't worry about that. And you're going to be getting better soon, right? Because you have to be getting to the tail end of this thing. So you'll be up and you'll be strong. And look, for the kids, when all is said and done, I don't think this is a bad experience for them to go through. You want to talk about growing up a little bit and seeing reality a little bit? Bella will step up. So it's all going to be fine. I know it makes a bad situation worse, but it's all going to be fine at the end.
Well, look, you know, just to be a little more transparent here, obviously I've been a little bit of a mess about this today, so I've been talking to Andrew about it a lot. The person who's not upset is Christina. Christina takes everything in stride, and so far we're hoping, and a lot of this is anecdotal because we just don't know that much, but in talking to so many of you who've experienced it in your own families, she lost her sense of smell and taste. And this is not science, okay? But anecdotally, the cases I hear about that are more mild tend to have that. I didn't have that. I didn't lose. And my friends who've had the long fevers like I have and the bad chest aspects, most of them didn't lose sense of smell. And that's more about hope than it is about, you know, anything hard in terms of fact. But Andrew is telling you the truth about one thing. My 17-year-old stepped up. The kids stepped up. Because mom is the core, right? I mean, when mom goes down, you feel it. And they have stepped up. They're helping each other. They're more quiet. They're focused on her. And hopefully it makes the family even stronger. But I got to tell you, it's tough. I mean, it really makes me understand how people are dealing with so much and so much more than we are all over the place and for a long time.
You'll get through it. You'll get through it.
All right, so let's do this. Let's talk about getting through. Reality check. Who has the power to reopen New York State? The president said, me. You said, nah. You're not the king. You're a president. He said, okay. But I give Cuomo and the other governors the power. You said, yeah, not really. And today he said, yeah, really, because I have all the power. Where are we?
I don't think I said nah, but I think the essence of what you're saying is, well, to you, that's what it sounded like. But I said 10th Amendment, I said states' rights, I said the states have clear legal authority when it comes to issues of health and quarantine. That was the Prince case. It was a New York case, 1992, New York versus United States. So it's clear on the law, and I did establish that. when the president said it. The president said he had total authority. That's not legally correct. I'm a governor. I represent the people of the state. Other governors all across the country said it. Governor Lamont said it. Governor Pritzker said it. They all said it. Democrats and Republicans. So it was important to establish that basic legal fact. It's the governor's power. I think the president walked it back as best he could. And he basically said, okay, it's the governor's power, but he's going to talk to the governors or something, which was, look, at the end of the day, it's fine, because he said it's up to the governors, and it's up to the governors when the governor will open their state, and that's true, and that's the law, and it is up to the governor, and the states are in a different position, Chris.
Well, I hear you, but let's say he goes bad on that, and he says, no, I'm going to reopen right now. Can you take him on? I mean, I'm not baiting you. I believe you about not wanting fights. It would be much better if this goes smooth. But this guy's a power player, and he's a good one. And if he says, you're going to reopen, Cuomo, you're going to pay. Because I'm not going to let you keep New York closed and hurt all these people because you don't know how to get your act together. You will pay if you don't play. How do you fight it?
Yeah, look, you're right. I don't want to fight. I don't want unnecessary fights, right? This is a very important time. You have this politically charged atmosphere. Everybody's in their respective corner. Anything can trigger a political brawl. We have a political brawl in the middle of this situation. It takes you want to talk about going from bad to worse. So I am bending over backwards to stay out of politics, right? That's why I said 57 times, I don't have any political agenda. I'm not running for anything, period. If people think there's any politics in this, no, I've not reconsidered. The answer stands. So why did I go to such great lengths? If people think there's any political filter here, then their backs are going to get up, their antenna is going to go up, and they're going to say, well, something's funny. No politics. I don't want any unnecessary fights. The president would never say, I'm going to overrule the governor of New York or any state, because he would have no legal basis whatsoever. So he will never get there. Obviously, if he put a governor in a corner and he poked him with a sharp stick, the governor would say, I would say, I'm not going to put the welfare and health of my people in danger. But he would never go there.
I would like to see him poke you with a sharp stick, by the way, just as an aside.
I know you. I never doubted that.
I would pay to see that, actually. Raise revenue for the state.
I know.
The idea of his ability to do it. Okay, let's say you're right. We've seen him do things that he didn't have a legal basis to do before. And he does it because he believes might makes right. But let's say it doesn't happen. We have a bigger problem, okay? All the plans and the phases, and we'll do this, and I'm going to push the states to do it earlier. It's all neglecting the reality that frightens us all most. Testing. He says, we don't do the testing, it's on you. You, the governor of Connecticut, New Jersey, Illinois, Ohio, you all say, we're not prepared to test. We can't handle the scale. Can you open anywhere, anything, if you can't do testing, tracing, and treatment?
Yeah, that's a legitimate issue. I knew you would get to one sooner or later. Look, the way I think of it is, when is this over? It's over when you have a vaccine, right? Because then people know the virus is dead. That's 12 to 18 months. So the question is, how do you get from here to 12 to 18 months? Well, maybe they'll come up with a medical treatment, convalescent plasma, etc. Yeah, maybe. Otherwise, we have to get from here to 12 months, 18 months. And we have to start to phase in the opening of the economy while we're watching the public health consequence and the number of hospitalizations, etc. Testing is the best mechanism for you to get your way through this 12 to 18 months. Now, why doesn't the president want to go near testing? Because testing is a quagmire. No one can do it. No one can bring it up to scale quickly. It is very complicated. I have spent days and days on this. Government doesn't really do testing. It's really a private lab function. To now take testing and ramp it up to where you have to bring it, Chris, is an impossibility, right? The private sector companies don't have enough equipment. They don't have enough.
Go. We got to take a break, but this matters too much. So let's go to break on this stuff. Help me understand, because when people hear you say Nobody can do it. Why? Why is it so hard? Is it about not having enough tests, not enough people, not enough labs? Why can't America do it when we can do everything?
Yeah, it's all of the above. It's all of the above. Look, can we do it? Can you? Yes. Can you do it in 1 month? Well, no. So everybody's reaction is hands off because this is now going to be the blame game. Well, there wasn't enough testing. Who's to blame? That's why the president said 11 times. After I said 11 times, the states can't do the tests, right? You've never heard me say, I'm not capable. I give up. I don't like to say it. It's not who I am. It's not what I believe. But I said it because I want to make sure we're clear. I can't do it. I can't bring it to scale. This gets very complicated. It was all of the above. No work. They don't have enough manufacturing equipment. They don't have enough vials. They don't have enough swabs. They don't have enough machines. The private labs don't have the capacity. They need testing agents that don't even come from this country. There's a whole international supply chain to this. So to grab hold of this is very problematic. And we just went through the situation of how do we build ventilators in 14 days, and that turned out to be very complicated. So this testing is now what ventilators was in this new phase. And I said I can't do it. The president said the states must do it. The states are saying we can't. This has to be justified, this dispute. And it's not even a dispute. The truth is nobody can do it well. You can't bring that industry to this volume, this scale, nationwide, but we can't have 50 states. What's happening now is I'm competing against all the other states for those private sector companies that have some capacity. So I'm trying to buy tests. I called Governor Pritzker. There's a company in his state that does tests, and they're one of the leading companies. I said, how do we do this? I don't want to compete with you. But every state is now competing for it, and the federal government. And this is madness. We did this with ventilators. It can't be 50 states scrambling and bidding for the same product from the same 10 companies in the country. It can't be.
All right. Let's take a break, because look, this is very sobering. Because what's the difference between ventilators and testing? Well, ventilators is for a very discrete part of the population that so far hasn't burst. But all of us need testing equipment. The reach has to be complete. Anywhere you want to open up, and you want me to go with my kids, I'm going to want to know I'm safe. Let's take a break. When I come back, we'll talk with the governor about how do we get somewhere better? And what is the impact that New York is already going to have to deal with economically and in terms of our lifestyle? Next.
Coronavirus. The situation is serious and it deserves vigilant attention. But the constant flow of information about this global pandemic can take a toll on your mental health. So here are 5 things you can do to take care of your mental health during a challenging and difficult time like this. Number 1, avoid information overload. Slim down on how much daily information about this virus you consume. Make sure that you find a few trusted sources, like the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and stick to those. Number 2, name your fears and prepare. Try not to overestimate the likelihood that your fears will happen, and don't underestimate your ability to deal with them. Number 3, think outside of yourself. Actions can counter anxiety. You may want to consider helping someone else who's perhaps more affected by this outbreak than you are. Number 4, seek support wisely. Seek support, but avoid talking to people who are as worried as you are. That may just leave you in an echo chamber. Number 5, routine. Try not to get so wrapped up in your thoughts that you neglect your routine. Being active during the day and getting enough sleep at night can help maintain your sense of well-being. Lastly, never feel guilty about your worries. The key is to understand and contextualize your worries so that they don't keep you from living your healthiest life.
Another round of applause for health workers in the UK. The British Navy joined in, as did police up and down the country. Emergency services on the other side of the Atlantic showed their appreciation for health workers too. This in New York. opportunity for a performance and a special outfit, be it Hawaiian dancer, Iron Man, or even a dinosaur. The movement was inspired by this bin isolation Facebook group, which says the bin goes out more than us, so let's dress up for the occasion. Hello, I'm Dolly Parton. And for those parents working 9 to 5, Dolly Parton's got you covered. Are you ready? Each week, Parton will be reading a bedtime story online. Good night.
Starts to come to grips with the reality of life in the time of coronavirus, businesses are finding new ways to contribute to the international relief efforts. Lyft has provided a month of free membership to City Bikes for all first responder, healthcare, and transit workers in New York City, adding new stations nearby hospitals. Uniqlo parent company Fast Retailing has asked its manufacturing partners to turn production to medical masks, with a total of 10 million masks being sent to the highest priority areas. Meanwhile, luxury wedding brand Panovius has taken a different approach, offering a free wedding dress to any hospital-employed bride-to-be through August, providing the pandemic has been brought under control. For more stories of the people making a difference and to find out how you can impact your world, go to cnn.com/impact.
The straight talk you need from your man in Washington, who won't back down. The Lead with Jake Tapper, weekdays on CNN.
All right, we're here with Governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, a sobering discussion about how testing is everything. Quick question. Admiral Giroir, okay, he is the official in charge at HHS for doing all the testing. I've never interviewed him. I've rarely seen him out front. He is in charge of the most important component. Have you had any back and forth with him? Is there any kind of, interconnectedness on that level?
No, I'll take your word that he exists, but I wouldn't know otherwise.
Well, the governor of New York, and I'm not calling this about ignorance. I'm talking about this process is not where it needs to be, big brother. Economically, you're doing your budget right now. How big a bite has this taken out of your state budget, and what will that mean in terms of needs and your ability to deliver on bigger needs than you may have ever seen before?
Yeah, we actually got the budget done, but I wouldn't suspect that you would know, given that you've been sick and in your basement for 2 weeks. The budget, we have about a $10 to $15 billion gap, which is all the money in the world to us. It's been devastating to the economy. That's the other part of this equation. The federal government says it's up to the states. The states should do this. The states should do this. The National Governors Association, NGA, chairman is a Republican. I'm the vice chair, Democrat. We sent a joint letter saying to the president, we've been cut out of the other federal bills. You expect us to do anything. We need funding as a state because otherwise we can't do any of this.
You say cut out. He says, what are you talking about? I gave you like the most amount of money of anybody.
No, he didn't give the state government. The state governments got cut out. What they did was, it was political pork barrel, especially on the Senate side. They give every state that has a senator winds up with a big chunk of money, whether it has to do with COVID or not, and there's a proportionality or not. And they funded entities in the state, hospitals, this entity, but they didn't give any money to the state government. So then I had to cut all sorts of funds. And I don't have any money to implement any of the things we're talking about. So, look, it's not, you don't pick up a lot of political chits giving money to a state government. So the politicians don't want to do it. But that's the responsible thing to do. And I've made that point abundantly clear, I think, to my delegation.
His criticism is you ask for too much. Cuomo's always on the phone. Give me, give me, give me, give me. He didn't even need it. He didn't need the hospital ship. He didn't need the ventilators. He didn't need the beds. but we gave it to him anyway because I'm a nice guy. True?
Yeah, I don't think he said exactly that. I guess the basic message.
That was
right.
the gist.
You say it in a more...
Just answer it.
Yeah. Well, you say it in a more provocative tone, but I'm not going to rise to the bait from you or for anyone. I'm not in a fighting mood. There will come a time when I may be in a fighting mood, but that is down the road when we're over the bridge. And
Yeah, I know. You're a real cool
right
dude
now
in a loose mood. Is that you, right?
Cool dude in a loose mood. Don't you forget it. You can't get me to rise to the bait. I said, yeah, well, everything makes you sweat. It's called a fever. But anyway, the president did say I asked him for help. He was right. I did ask him for help. He is the federal government. And we were afraid of going over capacity in the hospital system. He brought in the Army Corps of Engineers. He did it quickly. They did a great job. 2,500 beds at Javits. The U.S. Navy ship Comfort. I said, great job. I applaud the Army Corps of Engineers. The president did it in one day. It was the overflow valve. We've also had about 800 people go through Javits. And you needed that buffer because we were looking at numbers that said we needed 3 times the number of hospital beds that we had. And by the way, those numbers came from the CDC, from the White House Coronavirus Task Force. So it's not, who was dealing with bad projections. The numbers from the CDC.
Hey, look, and
from,
thank God the flattening is
from
happening.
the coronavirus task force.
Flattening is happening
Yes,
too, though.
that's
Give
true.
yourself credit.
Yes.
Give everybody
Yes.
credit. People have done the right thing, and that's
Yes.
why it's not a gotcha that the
Yes.
projections aren't right. It means we're doing the right thing. The question is, how do you keep doing the right thing?
Yes.
So you just put up a muscular measure. Masks everywhere you go. Everybody.
No, the executive order had a proviso. The executive order said masks when you are in public, if you are in a situation where you can't maintain social distancing, right? So you don't have to wear the mask if you're in public or outside and nobody's around. But when you get close to someone, then you have to wear the mask because, and in muscular, I know people aren't crazy about it, and it's an inconvenience. But look, in the scope of things, you don't have a right to infect me, right? And we're spending all this time, all this money, closing down everything to lower the spread. A mask is not that big a deal, right? It could be a mask, it could be a cloth, bandana.
Two pushback. First pushback.
Yeah, that's right.
You can't enforce it. You can't enforce it. You don't have the police. 20% of them almost are out sick. You can't be chasing around people about masks. You can't enforce it. Nobody's going to do it.
Yeah, we can enforce it, and the proviso I can enforce personally. The local governments have police forces. They can enforce it. They will enforce it. We don't have a civil fine that goes with this now, but we could. And I believe people are going to follow it. Look, Chris, nobody had to listen to anything I said. From day one, I had no ability to enforce this. The reason I communicate so much with the public right now is I want them to understand the facts and the plain truth and why I'm taking these actions. If they believe it makes sense, they will do it. This is New York. You're not going to force anyone to do anything. But I spend the time to lay the groundwork so people have followed the advice that I give them and the executive orders that I give them. Because they could have told me to pound sand on any of these things.
Fair point. Second point of pushback. You can't set an example, true or false, for wearing the mask because you can't find one that fit over that huge double-barreled shotgun mounted in the middle of your face.
See, I'm not going to rise to the bait. I love you. I love you. Heretic rebel, a thing to flout. We drew a circle of love that included him in. I love you.
Hold on.
Hit you with
Don't
that.
you go quoting Pop's poem to me. Although that is where you got that schnoz. Hold